That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I have no idea how many people requested this video over there on Patreon, which is a little weird because everybody that is on Patreon should already have my rankings and tiers. Maybe they just want me to go through and talk about them. So I'm going to go through, and this is going to be a little bit of a different video because usually we want to go in depth with the players that we talk about. Usually I really think that videos where you skim through and you just talk about each player for 45 seconds or so, it's not necessarily doing it justice. It's not necessarily putting you in a position where you really have a good understanding of those players. So of course, y'all know videos from here on out probably not going to look like this. Probably we're going to stick to just talking about 3, 4, 5 players because I really think that in that range we can dive in depth. We can really discuss those players at length with their pros and their cons. But here we're going to go through our 2021 fantasy football running back tiers. Now, of course, if you want the exact rankings list, you can find that over there on Patreon, which is in the description of the video. And I know not that many people can go through and join Patreon, which is completely fine, which is why our partnership with Underdog Fantasy this upcoming season is perfect. This is where I've been drafting all of my 2021 fantasy football teams. This is my favorite place to play fantasy football. And when you make a $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy and you use promo code FLOCK, you actually get $25 added to your account. You get our 2021 fantasy football draft guide. You get our 2021 rankings and tiers, which are going to be updated until the very beginning of the season. So definitely go out there. Make sure you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. The link can be found in the description of the video. And let's go through. Let's start it off with Christian McCaffrey at the 101. And yeah, y'all know very little to say about with CMC. I mean, this is a running back that we can easily see average 28, 29 points per game at the running back position, which doesn't necessarily sound as meaningful as it is, but you have no idea what a 28, 29 points per game season looks like from running back in terms of the win rate that it's going to lead to on your fantasy team this upcoming season. If you actually look back to 2019, there were about a third of the teams that drafted Christian McCaffrey in a 12-man format actually come through and win their league. That is ridiculous. It's to the point where literally I think that we probably should be playing in at auctions because just the 101 is getting such a large advantage over the rest of the field, where if you get the 101, you just need to be thankful. You need to realize that at this point, you're not trying to win the league. You're just trying not to lose it because CMC is, I mean, Thomas, when you edit the video, please do this for me. We're going to have a tier with Christian McCaffrey. Then we're going to have a blank tier underneath because I want to illustrate how big of a gap Christian McCaffrey is from every other player in fantasy. You can never, ever consider Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. I mean, if you do, you're stupid. You can't. Now, going to our next tier, we're going to start this one off. We're not going to do these in order because I don't want to give away the rankings. But this tier is going to have Alvin Kamara in it. And with Alvin Kamara, this is a running back that honestly, I would not have included in this tier before Jameis Winston was announced as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Because we do need to worry about with Kamara, given the fact that what we saw last year with Taysom Hill and that he drastically cut down on the targets per game that we saw Alvin Kamara. We have to worry that there is some downside that we have yet to see with Kamara's career since 2017. We know this has been a running back near the very top of fantasy leaderboards every single season. But that's because he's been someone that can average 7 points per game. 7 targets per game just based on Drew Brees checking it down often. Now, Jameis Winston, not going to be checking it down that much, but still someone that's not going to be super mobile. He's still going to be a stationary guy that will check the ball down to the running back out of the backfield. Taysom Hill won't. So we need Jameis for Alvin Kamara to be in this tier. And then the other running back, obviously Dalvin Cook. For whatever reason, I have been getting some questions as of late and going, Mason, are you not worried about Dalvin Cook's injury concerns? Guys, every running back in this range is going to have some injury concerns. Every running back that's seeing about 300 touches a season is someone that you have to be a little worried about with their injuries. Now, I will say some running backs, the thing we need to be a little more concerned than others. The factors that are going to lead to me getting concerned are workload as well as age. I mean, age is the biggest predictor of what you're going to have with trying to predict injuries in the NFL, especially at the running back position. Now, going to our next tier, let's start this one off with Ezekiell Elliott. So Elliott, like we have said so many times before, yes, this is a running back that saw the dip in efficiency last season, but that was mainly due to the offensive line just being completely decimated. And most importantly, due to the fact that without Dak Prescott, this was an offense that went from near the very top of the NFL to near the bottom. Just like that, Dak Prescott should be healthy week 1, so Ezekiell Elliott should be in this tier. Now, someone that I'm going to be ranking higher than consensus this season, especially for anybody playing in a PPR format, is going to be Saquon Barkley. Because here with Saquon Barkley, a lot of people forget exactly how he's utilized in the New York Giants offense, but he's very similar to, I don't want to say it, but in Alvin Kamara. There are very few running backs, not named Christian McCaffrey, not named Alvin Kamara, that can see 7 targets per game. We have seen this with Saquon Barkley before. Do not forget it. Barkley is a massive running back that's going to get used so much in the receiving game for New York. Obviously, if it wasn't for the injury, he would be higher than this. And most importantly, if it wasn't for the fact that he's playing on a very bad offense with a very bad offensive line, I mean, I really want to put him in the same tier as the Dalvin Cook or an Alvin Kamara. I mean, there are 2 main red flags with Saquon Barkley, the offensive line and the injury. If either red flag were gone and we are only having to worry about one thing, then he'd be up there with the Dalvin Cook and an Alvin Kamara. But for now, I actually think that we have to have him in tier 3. Now, our next running back, if you look at our overall rankings, you're going to see that we are lower on him compared to consensus. And I know a lot of people are going to hate us, but he is in this tier. We're putting him in tier 3. It's going to be Derrick Henry. Okay, so here with Derrick Henry, this is a running back that, I mean, yes, is coming off of a 2,000-yard rushing season. And that is unbelievably impressive. And you can easily make the argument for Derrick Henry to potentially be one of, if not the best running backs in the NFL. But the problem is, for a fantasy football perspective in a PPR format, we have already seen Derrick Henry hit his ceiling, and we know what that is in fantasy football. Derrick Henry running for over 2,000 rushing yards. It ain't getting better than that, guys. It's not getting better than that. Derrick Henry hit his ceiling last year, and that ceiling showed that he is still not going to be the top running back overall in fantasy. So he's one of those guys that, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Zeke finishes as the running back 1, if Dalvin finishes as the running back 1, if Kamara finishes as the running back 1, if CMC finishes as the running back 1. But given the fact that Derrick Henry isn't getting utilized at all in the receiving game, Derrick Henry would have to rush for like 2,400 yards to be the running back 1 in fantasy. And I know it's crazy to say, but trust me, the math checks out. We have seen this time and time again. We have shown this in depth with how important receptions are, because just say a Saquon Barkley ends up getting 50 more receptions than a Derrick Henry this upcoming season, which will probably even get more than that, but just say it's 50. All of a sudden, that's the equivalent of 500 rushing yards that Saquon Barkley is just getting added on just based on those cheap receptions. And then he's getting the receiving yards, then he's getting the receiving touchdowns, but just the receptions. I mean, that could be an additional 500 rushing yards equivalent just like that. But we are going to have Derrick Henry in tier 3. And then our last running back in this tier is going to be Aaron Jones. Obviously, you have to move him here when we know that Aaron Rodgers will be the starting quarterback for Green Bay all of 2021. I mean, Aaron Jones, I will say I am a little concerned that A.J. Dillon's going to get some more usage at the goal line compared to what Jamal Williams had over the past few seasons. Jamal Williams leaves, but A.J. Dillon is going to be stepping into a role that, I mean, is not going to allow Aaron Jones to be an Ezekiell Elliott type workhorse, but this is going to be someone getting a ton of targets out of the backfield. We've seen him get the utilization in the red zone before, so it is going to be hard to drop Aaron Jones any lower than this. And now our next tier, let's just lead it off with the guy that we actually have ranked highest in this tier, and that's going to be Jonathan Taylor. Okay, so Jonathan Taylor, I think now that we have so much positive news circulating about both Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson, you're going to have to continue to move Jonathan Taylor up your rankings. He is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, playing behind one of the most talented offensive lines. Yes, we're concerned about Carson Wentz. Yes, we're concerned about Nyheim Hines. But now that you're getting Jonathan Taylor at the 1-2 turn, instead of having to spend a top 6 pick on him, I think Jonathan Taylor is a fantastic value. Now, another running back that's going to be in this tier, keep in mind, we're not doing this based on our rankings, but just the tiers, is actually going to be a Najee Harris. Now, here with the Najee Harris, a big reason why you actually want to have him up here is given the fact that the workload is going to be ginormous. I mean, we know that Najee Harris is going to be playing on almost every single down for this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. We have seen Mike Tomlin want to go out there and just use a 3-down bell cow running back, no matter who it is. It doesn't matter who it is, but that running back is going to be a bell cow. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason, I mean, Le'Veon Bell was the running back 1. He was the running back 2 overall in fantasy leagues so far back then. Guys, it's not the same scenario. It's a much worse offense. Ben Roethlisberger is a much worse quarterback. At the same time, it's a much worse offensive line. This could be one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. That's why I'm actually going to have Najee Harris in tier 3 rather than having him up there where we had the guys like an Ezekiell Elliott and an Aaron Jones, just because I think the overall situation in Pittsburgh is going to be pretty gross, even though the workload will be there. Now, talk about a situation getting better. Let's look at our next running back, which is going to be an Austin Ekeler. So Ekeler, I mean, this is someone that is possibly playing behind the most improved offensive line in 2021 in the Los Angeles Chargers. They go out there and make a splash play. I know they signed the center from the Green Bay Packers, gave him a ton of guaranteed money. I believe it was Corey Lindsey. I could be so wrong in that. Y'all could be laughing at me right now. But obviously they draft Rashawn Slater in the first round as well. This is a vastly improved offensive line unit. Austin Ekeler should be healthy this upcoming season. Justin Herbert should be the best quarterback that he's ever played with because he never got to play with prime Phillip Rivers. Instead, he was playing with tail end of his career Phillip Rivers. So you really have to like Austin Ekeler this upcoming season. Antonio Gibson also sliding into this tier. I mean, Antonio Gibson, this is someone that has Christian McCaffrey type level upside. I mean, he is an elite level athlete. He profiles to be a 3-down guy. Yes, he didn't get the receiving down usage last year. That did go to JD McKissick, but that was mainly because as a wide receiver transfer, I mean, this is someone that most likely did not know pass protection. He had to work in that area of the game. Nobody's going to be surprised if all of a sudden a former wide receiver is getting utilized over JD McKissick. Nobody's going to be surprised to see that. Now, another running back we're putting in here, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon. We made an entire video about Joe Mixon, but to summarize, yes, I understand Mixon has failed in fantasy over the past 2 seasons. He's played over the past 2 seasons on the worst team in the NFL, which led to the team getting the first overall pick in 2020 with Joe Burrow. He's played with a rookie quarterback who got hurt halfway through the year. And also, if you actually look at Joe Mixon, he has suffered 3 injuries. A knee sprain, a foot sprain, and a concussion through his NFL career dating back to 2017. So don't tell me this is someone that's injury prone and he's playing in an offense that adds a vertical element with Jamar Chase that should help just Joe Mixon not have to go up against as many stacked boxes. It's still a bad offensive line, but it's a better offensive line than last year. Joe Burrow is actually now a second-year quarterback compared to a rookie. And most importantly, Giovanni Bernard is gone. So Joe Mixon is going to see an Ezekiell Elliott type level workload for this upcoming season. So I'm actually excited to draft Joe Mixon as much as I know everybody will hate to hear that. And now our last running back in this tier is going to be a Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, I actually hated him when he was going in the first round earlier in fantasy drafts, but now we're seeing Nick Chubb consistently fall to the middle of the second. I am perfectly fine drafting Nick Chubb there because we know that he is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. And throw in the fact that with Nick Chubb, this is actually someone that is playing behind the best offensive line in the NFL. Can't have him as a first-round pick, however, just because Kareem Hunt is there, and this is going to be a split backfield. Now going to our next tier. This is going to be a tier of only 3 players, and let's start it off with someone I was not drafting at all just a month ago. We were drafting his teammate, James Robinson. I mean, it's hard to have James Robinson much lower than this, but James Robinson, he was a top 10 running back in fantasy last year. Now, I will say, I understand the offense is going to be dramatically better, so all of a sudden you're probably sitting here going, Mason, how are you ranking someone who is a top 10 running back as a rookie? Then he plays in a better offense. How are you ranking him lower than where he finished last year? Well, I think with Urban Meyer, they're going to be a little less likely to give James Robinson literally every single touch in this backfield. It's crazy to see the workload that James Robinson had last year based on how Devine Ozigbo actually played in this last preseason game, based on the fact that they go out there and they actually sign Carlos Hyde and they prioritize getting him in even before they drafted Travis Etienne. I think there are reasons to believe that James Robinson doesn't see the same level of touches, but still, I mean, he should actually be more efficient on a per touch basis, given the fact that Trevor Lawrence is going to make defenses really change their scheme, and they're not just going to be planning against James Robinson. Now, another running back that we're having in this tier is going to be someone that we were also drafting earlier this offseason, but the injury is a real concern, DeAndre Swift. Now, if it wasn't for the injury, I think that DeAndre Swift would clearly be a better option than James Robinson, but now I think they have to be in the exact same tier. And with the Swift here, I understand a very bad offense, and trust me, I'm actually willing to draft Jamal Williams on a team that I don't take DeAndre Swift, because we know Jamal Williams, based on the guaranteed money that he got this offseason, he's going to be getting touches every single game. But you're drafting a DeAndre Swift not to be an Ezekiell Elliott. You're drafting a DeAndre Swift not to be a Derrick Henry. He's not going to be seeing 25 touches per game. What is so valuable about DeAndre Swift is he is the new age running back in the NFL, where he has the frame where he can get usage in the red zone. He can be used as the goal line running back, which is what we saw last year. And at the same time, he's going to get every single target out of the backfield. So he's a player getting all the valuable touches in the offense compared to all of the touches in the offense, which, to be honest, I mean, this is what we had with Alvin Kamara. This is what we had with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams' old teammate, and they were still very productive in fantasy. And no, I'm not saying DeAndre Swift's going to be an Alvin Kamara. I'm not saying he is going to be a player like Aaron Jones. Now, I'll say he's going to be a worse version of that. That's why we have him a couple tiers below, but that's why you're drafting DeAndre Swift, even though he is in a bad offense as well. Now, throwing in this same tier, we are going to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, with CEH, another player dealing with an injury that's nagging going into the season, but right now, I mean, he looks like he could be a massive buy low candidate. He was someone going as a top 5 pick in high stakes redraft leagues as a rookie last season. And he started off the year pretty hot with the opportunity that he had in Kansas City. The problem is they bring on Le'Veon Bell halfway through the year. If you look at the splits, really nasty with what we actually had from Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the opportunity perspective with and without Le'Veon Bell. Now Le'Veon Bell is gone. Clyde Edwards-Helaire should be getting almost every single touch in this backfield. Throw in the fact that with CEH, he's playing in the best offense in football. So, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, going to be easy to throw in this tier. Now, we got to keep going. We got to go a little faster because we're closing in on 20 minutes. Let's pull up our next tier, which is actually going to have a David Montgomery leading us off. With David Montgomery, if we actually knew that he was going to have the same workload that he had at the end of last season when the only other running back in his backfield was Cordell Patterson, then of course we would have David Montgomery higher than this. But you have to be slightly concerned based on the fact that they do bring in Damien Williams. Damien Williams, they have had positive reports coming out of camp that he could be getting usage on passing downs, which that would cut into a David Montgomery. But still, I mean, David Montgomery, we know he's going to be getting a significant amount of touches. And now someone, keep in mind, we're not going and doing this by our rankings. We're just doing this with tiers. But someone that at the beginning of the offseason, I was screaming to avoid when he was going in the 3rd round of fantasy drafts. But now we're getting him in the end of the 5th round in 12-man real money drafts on Underdog Fantasy. On Underdog Fantasy, I've seen him fall to the 6th. And if you want to draft him in the 6th round on Underdog Fantasy, make sure you use promo code FLOCK, made that $10 deposit, and get everything added on. Link in the description. But there, Josh Jacobs going in the 6th round sometimes. Now, in your drafts that you're going to do, maybe he doesn't fall to the 6th. Maybe he goes to the end of the 4th. But this was a player I was all out on previously. But now that you're actually seeing Jacobs go in a range where I think that you are getting a massive discount with Kenyon Drake coming over for $11 million guaranteed. Yes, Drake is going to have a role on the offense. But, I mean, Josh Jacobs had the largest red zone role in the entire NFL last year. I mean, when they got to the red zone, they were calling a running play after running play after running play for Josh Jacobs. That's what we want. Now, another running back skyrocketing up, just like what you had with James Robinson. Let's throw in Gus Edwards here. Now, at the time of this recording, Baltimore has not brought in another running back. And just like what we discussed with Darrell Henderson when Cam Akers was injured, this is a team that I don't think it's as likely that they trade for someone. Y'all know we said that the Rams were most likely going to be trading for a running back to bring in. That's why we didn't want Darrell Henderson. Baltimore, not that exact same situation. I do think Baltimore is going to go out and sign a Le'Veon Bell, a Todd Gurley, and Adrian Peterson. They're signing someone. We don't know who it's going to be yet, but still Gus Edwards. My problem is he's going to have no usage whatsoever in the receiving game. I mean, it's going to be disgusting with how many targets he is actually getting in a PPR league. If you're playing in a non-PPR format, I actually think that you put him up in the tier above with the DeAndre Swift, the James Robinson. But in PPR, I mean, Lamar Jackson very rarely checks the ball down. Gus Edwards, not a good pass catcher to begin with, not a great combination, but still should be very efficient running in that Baltimore Ravens offense and should have a good shot at a decent amount of touchdowns. So now our next running back is going to be a Chris Carson in this tier. Now, Chris Carson, we've actually seen him be productive before in fantasy when the Seattle Seahawks are going to go run heavy. And last year, he proved that he can still be a productive piece in the Seattle Seahawks offense if they are skewing to go more pass happy. So you've actually really seen Chris Carson on both sides of the coin provide you production in fantasy. I think he's probably a safe pick considering that, I mean, you're taking him in a range where you're not necessarily having a massive opportunity cost at receiver. However, I will say this is one of the very few players in the NFL I would label as someone we have to be concerned about with injuries. So I would want to put that little caveat out there. And then the last running back in this tier we are going to have is actually going to be a Myles Sanders. So with Myles Sanders, yes, I understand a lot of people are lowering down the overall expectation for this Philadelphia Eagles offense, and that's going to include a Myles Sanders. But personally, I think a lot of people are overrating the actual role that you're going to have from a Kenneth Gainwell, from a Boston Scott, where I think that Myles Sanders is going to be taking maybe a 70-30 split in this backfield. And we know that the running efficiency is going to be there as long as Jalen Hurts is an above average NFL quarterback. A lot actually hinges on that. And now going down to our next tier, this is going to be tier 7, tier 8. I have no idea where we're at this point, but let's go and let's lead it off with our guy, is someone I've been drafting time and time again, Kareem Hunt. Okay, so with Kareem Hunt, this is the exact mold of a running back that I am actually looking for, in that he has a role on his NFL offense. And I know so many of y'all have heard me say this before, but he has a role on his offense where if you are desperate for a running back too, you can go out there and you can start a Kareem Hunt. But what is more exciting about Kareem Hunt is if anything were to occur to Nick Chubb, I stand by the fact that Kareem Hunt vaults up to be a first-round pick in fantasy drafts. I mean, we have seen him lead the NFL in rushing as a rookie. He's running behind the best offensive line in football. So you have a pick that, I mean, you're making, and you can start him every week, but it has the hidden upside where if something were to occur to Nick Chubb, literally, if Nick Chubb tore his ACL in week 2, the team who drafts Kareem Hunt wins. And it's that simple. I mean, it's that simple. Fantasy football doesn't have to be too hard. So just getting that baked in upside is pretty nice. And then also we have Javonte Williams in this tier. Now, Javonte Williams, I know a lot of people are going to go to the comment section and say, Mason, don't you know Melvin Gordon's the starting running back in Denver? And I'm going to say, well, you know what? Maybe for week 1, maybe for week 2, maybe for week 3, but we got a 17-game slate this upcoming season. And I can almost guarantee you by the time we get halfway through the season, the running back that's going to be starting in Denver is going to be named Javonte Williams. And we know that points at the end of the year are going to matter more, considering the fact that that's when the fantasy football playoffs will be. Javonte Williams profiles as a 3-down running back. Denver trades up to select him in the top 40 picks of this year's NFL draft. I'm going to be going Javonte Williams. And then also in this tier, we have Darrell Henderson. Now with Henderson, I actually think that it's kind of funny, maybe very similar to what happened with Josh Jacobs. This is a running back that after Cam Akers tore his ACL, I mean, I kind of stayed here because I was going, okay, yeah, he projects nicely for now, but we know this is a team that's going to bring someone in. We have talked about this for so many different reasons. Now we see them actually bring in Sony Michel through trade. So I go, okay, well, we are already kind of expecting that. So maybe we move Darrell Henderson down just slightly. But if the fantasy football community kind of panics and they take Darrell Henderson from here, where he was, in my opinion, being way overdrafted, and they just plummet him down, all of a sudden, then I'll probably be willing to start drafting Darrell Henderson. So it's hard for me to try to say if I'm higher or lower on Darrell Henderson compared to consensus as of now. I've had him as a low-end running back 2, high-end running back 3 since the Cam Akers injury. I think we're going to keep that this way right now. So now let's go to our next tier of guys. Now, we've actually added some players here based on preseason performance as well as based on some preseason news. Now, this tier, we're going to lead off. Keep in mind, these aren't the rankings. These are tiers, but let's lead it off with Damien Harris. Okay, so with Damien Harris, this has been a hell of a month for Damien Harris. A, Sony Michel traded. Obviously, that's going to impact how many touches per game that you actually get from Damien Harris. And B, Cam Newton released. Now, this is perfect. We discussed this in a live stream today, and that with the Cam Newton release, you're going to get more targets per game for Damien Harris. You're going to get less touchdowns vultured at the goal line because Mac Jones will be willing to check the ball down, and Mac Jones definitely isn't running anything in from the 1-yard line. So, I mean, Damien Harris, a lot more appealing in fantasy now. In a PPR format, I'm not going to like him as much as I would in a half PPR or a non-PPR. Now, another running back that I want in this tier, this is going to be someone else that we're moving up due to the preseason, is going to be Trey Sermon. Now, a big reason why I think we have to move Trey Sermon up a tier is based on the fact that, we have a good sense of what Kyle Shanahan is looking to do here. We have a good sense that Kyle Shanahan is looking to run, and then run the ball some more. So I think Trey Sermon, very similar to what we have with the Javonte Williams, is actually going to be a running back that, yes, may not necessarily be startable at the beginning of the season. But by the time we get halfway through the year, by the time we get to the fantasy football playoffs, then I think you can be really excited about a Trey Sermon. And then after this, we do have Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin, not a massive fan of. I think that while, yes, he does project to see a decent amount of opportunity in Miami, that can go away just like that. We know that those running backs that don't have the team investment, that you're not necessarily extremely excited about the talent. Instead, you're excited about the projected opportunity. Those are going to be very volatile players, and they're going to be very hard to predict. Now, it's easy to say so on paper, but at the end of the day, I think people are way too confident with what they have in certain projections here. Now, the last running back we're going to have in this tier is actually going to be a Mike Davis. Now, with a Mike Davis, also going to be someone that I'm very low on compared to consensus because I don't believe in the talent. I think a lot of people are just assuming that he's going to be the starting running back there for Atlanta for the next 17 weeks. And while, yes, it's great on paper, while, yes, you can say that on paper, Mike Davis is the best running back that Atlanta currently has. Once we get to week 4, who knows what the situation is going to look like. The NFL is very volatile. That's why I prefer to be drafting players that we believe to be are talented. I'm not there yet with Mike Davis, so I'm probably going to be looking to avoid. Now, thank you, my dudes. I really hope y'all enjoy this podcast. I really hope that y'all got something from it. Now, we're not going to go through all 50 running backs in this video. We already ran it pretty long. But if y'all want our full rankings in tiers, of course, that is available on Patreon, as well as if you make that $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, get $25 added to your account, get our 2021 Fantasy Football Draft Guide, get our 2021 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, hundreds of pages of information, literally like an $85 value, and get our rankings and tiers updated to the start of the season. Just use promo code FLOCK. You can find that in the description of the video. And yeah, that's all I got for you, my dudes, and have a great day. We have had the craziest amount of support over on Patreon. Thank you, Colby, Ryan, Spencer, Seb, It's Easy, David, Justin, Christian, Tyler, and Robert. Thank you.